A violent outburst by Raja Jackson, the son of MMA legend Rampage Jackson, has ignited one of the darkest scandals in recent fight history. The video of his brutal attack left fans sickened, and outrage is pouring in from every corner of the combat world. But the most shocking reaction didn't come from analysts or promoters. It came from Nate Diaz. Known for his raw honesty, Diaz didn't hold back. He said Raja doesn't just deserve prison, he deserves the death sentence. In this video, we'll break down the attack, the fallout, and why Diaz's chilling words may be the harshest judgment yet. It began with a moment that looked like chaos, ripped straight out of a nightmare. Raja Jackson, son of MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson, stepped into a pro wrestling-style ring and instantly blurred the line between performance and real violence. His opponent, known on the independent circuit as Psycho Stu, had already been rocked earlier in the night. But what came next left fans gasping and the entire combat sports world divided. Raja scooped Stu high into the air, lifted him as if to set up a wrestling slam, and then drove him headfirst into the canvas, with a vicious impact that wasn't pulled, wasn't staged, and certainly wasn't agreed upon. The crowd's initial cheers turned to horrified silence. The slam alone would have been shocking enough, but Raja didn't stop there. As Stu lay motionless, arms limp and eyes glazed, Raja dropped to his knees and unleashed a storm of punches, lefts, rights, hammer fists. More than 20 blows rained down on a man who was clearly unconscious. The referee hesitated, unsure if it was all part of the show, and that hesitation proved damning. The audience, expecting theatrics, slowly realized what they were watching wasn't entertainment. This was a real, uncontrolled beating unfolding in front of a live audience. Cell phones lit up the arena, recording every second of the assault. Within hours, clips of the attack had spread across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, racking up millions of views. The reactions weren't filled with laughter or memes like other viral wrestling mishaps. They were filled with disgust, horror, and accusations of attempted murder. For fans used to seeing violence contained within the boundaries of combat sports, what Raja did crossed into something else entirely, something raw, uncontrolled, and dangerous. Commentators who watched the footage said it reminded them less of a fight and more of a street assault. This wasn't competition, one fan wrote. It was like watching a mugging happen in front of a live audience. The violence of the moment and the sheer lack of empathy shown by Raja as he kept swinging on an unconscious man was enough to leave even hardened fight fans stunned. What made the entire scene more chilling was Raja's expression. Not the focused calm of a trained fighter, but the wild, chaotic energy of someone fueled by rage and ego. The incident instantly set the stage for a scandal of massive proportions. Raja Jackson wasn't a star yet, but he had just made his name known to the world, and not in the way he wanted. And as the dust settled in that arena, one thing became clear. This wasn't just another viral clip. This was the spark of a storm that would soon consume Raja, his father, and the reputation of the sport itself. By the next morning, Raja Jackson's violent outburst was everywhere. The video spread at lightning speed, jumping from niche wrestling forums to mainstream outlets. TMZ picked it up. ESPN reported on it. Major news networks used words like brutal, unprovoked, and sickening to describe what had unfolded in the ring. Within 24 hours, Raja's name was trending worldwide. Not because of talent or charisma, but because of the sheer shock factor of the attack. Social media turned into a courtroom. Thousands of fans replayed the footage frame by frame, counting each strike he landed on a defenseless opponent. One Twitter user wrote, "I counted 22 punches after the man was already out cold. That's not fighting. That's attempted murder." TikTok comments echoed the outrage. "This is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in a ring." The brutality wasn't just shocking, it was deeply unsettling to a fan base that's used to violence, but within rules, within context, within consent. Other fighters began weighing in. Boxing star Ryan Garcia called it the worst thing I've watched in a minute. minute and demanded Raja be punished. UFC veteran Derek Brunson tweeted that Raja's actions were out of line and proof he didn't belong in combat sports. Even influencers outside the MMA world mocked him, saying if Raja wanted to fight someone for real, he should get in the cage with a trained athlete instead of assaulting an unprepared wrestler. The referee's inaction quickly became its own scandal. Viewers were outraged that the man in stripes had stood by and watched as Raja hammered an unconscious opponent. "You don't need to be a doctor," one journalist wrote, "to know when a fighter is out." The ref froze, and his inaction might have cost someone their life. Calls for the referee to be banned from future shows poured in, but most of the rage stayed focused squarely on Raja. For fans of Rampage Jackson, the disappointment cut even deeper. Raja wasn't just another reckless kid. He was the son of a legend. To many, it felt like he had dragged his father's name through the mud in one reckless night. Fans who grew up idolizing Rampage now expressed disbelief that his son could commit an act so brutal and so detached from the values of combat sports. Rampage was wild, but he was still a professional, one longtime fan commented. This was just pure thuggery. The viral backlash was swift, merciless, and global. In less than 24 hours, Raja Jackson had gone from a relative unknown to one of the most despised names in combat sports. But what came next would drag his father, his family, and eventually even MMA icons like Nate Diaz into the firestorm. The outrage wasn't going away, it was only just beginning. When the backlash exploded, all eyes turned to one man, Quinton Rampage Jackson. The former UFC light heavyweight champion, known for his charisma and larger-than-life personality, now found himself in the impossible position of having to defend his son from accusations that bordered on attempted murder. For years, Rampage had been both celebrated and criticized for his wild antics, but he had always been respected as a fighter. Raja's actions, however, cast a long and dark shadow over his legacy. Almost immediately, Rampage went on livestream to address the situation. He admitted that Raja's behavior looked terrible, but insisted there was context fans weren't seeing. Rampage explained that earlier in the night, Psycho Stu had smashed a beer can over Raja's head backstage. And according to him, that incident provoked the later attack. "My son ain't a bad kid," Rampage said. "He just got disrespected. And when you disrespect a Jackson, you're gonna get checked." But instead of cooling the flames, Rampage's defense poured gasoline on the fire. Fans and fighters alike fired back. The provocation hours earlier was not justification for a violent assault on an unconscious opponent. "That's not how the sport works," one commentator snapped. "If somebody smacks you backstage, you don't wait until he's vulnerable and then nearly kill him in front of a live audience." Rampage's attempt to shield his son only made the scandal look worse. Worse still, clips began circulating showing Raja and Psycho Stu appearing to make peace after the beer can incident. One leaked video caught Raja shaking Stu's hand, muttering, "We're cool, it's all part of the show," just minutes before the violent outburst in the ring. This footage made Rampage's defense crumble even further. If Raja had already accepted an apology, why did he attack later? It painted a picture, not of provocation, but of cold-blooded retaliation. For Rampage personally, the scandal was devastating. His son wasn't just another young fighter trying to make a name, he was carrying the Jackson name, a legacy built on years of blood, sweat, and unforgettable fights in Pride and the UFC. Now that legacy was being dragged through the mud. The internet was merciless. Memes comparing Rampage's legendary slams to Raja's brutal assault circulated widely, with captions like, "The apple fell far from the tree." For a proud father, there could be no greater humiliation. Rampage doubled down in later comments, insisting that Raja was just young and had let his emotions get the best of him. But by then, the narrative had spun beyond his control. His son wasn't being seen as an emotional kid who made a mistake. He was being framed as a violent menace who had crossed the line between combat and crime. And Rampage's desperate attempts to protect him only added fuel to that fire. By the end of the week, one truth was painfully clear. Raja Jackson wasn't just tarnishing his own reputation, he was dragging his father's legacy down with him. As As the scandal deepened, a new debate erupted across social media, podcasts, and fight forums. Was Raja Jackson's brutal outburst the result of a misunderstanding, a wrestling stunt gone wrong, or was it something far darker, a premeditated act of violence? Those defending Raja leaned on the setup theory. They pointed out that pro wrestling blurs the line between entertainment and real fighting, and perhaps Raja had been under the impression that he was supposed to make it look real. Clips of Psycho Stu whispering something to the referee just before the slam were seized upon as evident. Some claimed it was a signal, a setup for a scripted spot that Raja simply took too far. This might just be a botched performance, argued one wrestling analyst. It wouldn't be the first time a move went wrong in the ring, but the opposing side, much larger and much louder, pointed to clear evidence that Raja's attack was not an accident. Hours before the event, Raja had been live streaming to his small audience of followers, ranting about how he wanted to mess up a pro wrestler for real. His exact words were damning. "It's always been my dream to expletive up a wrestler for real, so I get it today." The stream also showed him arguing with commenters, bragging that he would prove himself outside of his father's shadow. When pressed, he snapped, "You think I can't? Watch what I do to him." That live stream became the smoking gun. For most observers, it removed any doubt. This wasn't a stunt gone wrong, it was premeditated. Raja had walked into that ring already planning to cross the line between performance and violence. And when he slammed Psycho Stu unconscious and followed it up with 20 unanswered strikes, he wasn't improvising. He was acting out a grudge he'd been hyping for hours. The fallout from this revelation was brutal. Even those who had initially tried to defend him went quiet. The idea that Raja had gone into the ring with malicious intent reframed the scandal entirely. It was no longer just about an uncontrolled outburst. It was about intent, about premeditation, about whether he had essentially planned an assault in front of a live audience. This theory also intensified calls for legal action. If Raja's attack was premeditated, prosecutors would have a stronger case for serious charges. Lawyers on sports talk shows explained that intent could elevate the accusations from simple assault to aggravated assault, or even attempted manslaughter, depending on Psycho Stu's condition. And, as this debate raged, the MMA community grew increasingly restless. The scandal wasn't dying down, it was only escalating. The focus shifted from "what did Raja do?" to "what should happen to him now?" And that's when Nate Diaz entered the conversation, delivering a judgment so harsh that it shocked even the most hardened fans. By the second week after the incident, the conversation had moved beyond outrage and memes. Law enforcement was officially involved. LAPD confirmed they were reviewing footage from multiple angles, along with eyewitness statements from the audience and fellow performers. Suddenly, Raja Jackson wasn't just trending for violence. He was staring down the reality of potential criminal charges that could alter the course of his life forever. The language being used was chilling. Prosecutors openly discussed the possibility of aggravated assault, battery with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and even attempted manslaughter if Psycho Stu's medical reports confirmed the severity of his injuries. Leaked hospital documents suggested Stu suffered a severe concussion, facial fractures, and a period of unresponsiveness that some described as a temporary flatline. While these details were never officially confirmed, the rumor mill only added to the sense of doom hovering over Raja. Legal analysts on talk shows explained that what made this situation particularly damning was the context. The footage clearly showed that Stu was unconscious after the slam. His body went limp, his eyes rolled back. Yet Raja continued punching him relentlessly. In combat sports, referees are there to protect fighters once they're defenseless. In pro wrestling, performers are meant to protect each other, selling moves, but never actually endangering lives. Raja had violated both codes at once, making his actions appear reckless at best and malicious at worst. Then there was the live stream evidence. Screenshots circulated showing Raja boasting hours before the attack that he wanted to make it real and show people he's not a joke. Prosecutors reportedly took an interest in this as it hinted at premeditation. That small detail could make the difference between facing a few months in jail versus years in prison. Meanwhile, Rampage Jackson scrambled behind the scenes to hire top legal counsel for his son. Reports claimed he reached out to multiple high-profile attorneys in Los Angeles, sparing no expense. But even Rampage couldn't shield Raja from the mounting public anger. Fans were calling not only for Raja's arrest, but for lifetime bans from any form of combat sports or entertainment. "He's finished," one fighter tweeted. "No commission in the world will license him after this." The pressure was building like a storm cloud. Raja wasn't just dealing with the court of public opinion anymore. He was facing the possibility of handcuffs, trials, and a criminal record that could follow him for life. And yet, in the middle of this legal firestorm, voices from the MMA world began to weigh in louder than ever. Conor McGregor had already delivered his verdict, but what Nate Diaz said next would turn the conversation from legal consequences to something far more extreme. Conor McGregor, never one to stay silent in the face of controversy, was the first major star to weigh in on Raja Jackson's scandal. He took to social media with a statement that instantly went viral. "That wasn't fighting. That was rage without discipline. A fighter knows when to stop. Raja doesn't know. He's no fighter, just a fool dragging his father's name down." The comments hit like a thunderclap. Within minutes, McGregor's words were being shared by ESPN, MMA Junkie, and every major fight news outlet. Some praised McGregor for drawing a clear line between controlled combat and reckless violence. They argued that his voice carried weight, not just as a UFC legend, but as someone who understood the balance between showmanship and professionalism. But others saw only hypocrisy. Fans flooded replies with reminders of McGregor's own past scandals, hurling a dolly through a UFC bus window in 2018 and injuring multiple fighters, sucker punching a man in an Irish pub, and numerous arrests and allegations of violent behavior. Conor McGregor talking about discipline? One critic wrote, "That's like a wolf lecturing sheep on safety." Memes comparing McGregor's infamous outbursts with Raja's assault spread like wildfire. Still, McGregor's comments kept the spotlight burning hot. By condemning Raja, he forced other fighters to speak up. Michael Bisping backed him, saying Raja had no business touching a combat sports ring again. Daniel Cormier called it a disgrace to the Jackson name. But it was Nate Diaz, McGregor's longtime rival, who turned the conversation on its head. While McGregor framed Raja's actions as a lesson in control, Diaz was unfiltered, raw, and savage. He didn't just call for punishment, he called for execution. During a live Q&A, Diaz was asked about Raja's attack, and his response stunned even his own fanbase. "That kid don't deserve prison. He deserves the death sentence. Straight up, you don't beat an unconscious man like that and walk around free." The remark instantly overshadowed everything McGregor had said. McGregor's statement had been fiery, sure, but Diaz's words were nuclear. To many, it sounded less like commentary and more like a direct call for Raja's life to be ended. The internet lit up again, this time with debates not about Raja's guilt, but about whether Nate Diaz had just crossed his own line. In that moment, the scandal transformed. It was no longer just about Raja Jackson's violent outburst. It was about Nate Diaz's chilling judgment, a statement so extreme, it forced the fight world to ask, did Raja truly commit an act worthy of the death penalty? Or had Diaz's legendary bluntness gone too far? For days, Nate Diaz stayed quiet as the fight world erupted over Raja Jackson's violent assault, but when he finally spoke, his words instantly became the most controversial piece of the entire saga. Diaz has always been known for his blunt honesty and unwillingness to play the game of media politeness. Whether he was calling out UFC executives, taunting rivals, or dropping raw interviews that blurred the line between trash talk and gospel, Nate's reputation has always been built on saying exactly what was on his mind. And this time, his mind went darker than anyone expected. During a live stream Q&A with fans, Diaz was asked what he thought about Raja's actions. His response was chilling. "That kid don't deserve prison. He deserves the death sentence. Straight up, you don't beat an unconscious man like that and walk around free." The words cut through the noise like a blade. Diaz wasn't talking about fines, suspensions, or jail time. He wasn't calling for Raja to be banned from combat sports. He was calling for his life to end. The quote ricocheted across social media in seconds. Hashtags like #Nate Diaz and #Death Sentence trended worldwide. Fans replayed the clip endlessly, some cheering Diaz for his brutal honesty, others horrified that he'd go so far. Memes flooded timelines, images of Diaz's stone-faced expression next to bold captions of "death sentence." Analysts scrambled to react on podcasts, with some suggesting Diaz had crossed a moral line and others arguing he was simply voicing what many fans were already thinking but didn't dare say. For Diaz, the justification was simple. To him, Raja's act of slamming an opponent unconscious and then pummeling him with 20+ unanswered strikes wasn't fighting, it was execution. It broke the sacred, unwritten rule of combat sports: protect your opponent when they can no longer protect themselves. Diaz himself had spent years in wars inside the octagon, bloody brawls where respect was often earned in the very act of trying to beat one another down. But even in those moments, when the fight was over, the respect remained. Raja's actions shredded that code. "This ain't fighting," Diaz continued in follow-up comments. "This is murder, straight-up murder. If you do that, you ain't a fighter, you're just a punk hiding behind your dad's name." To a man like Diaz, who built his life and career around respect earned in real combat, Raja's outburst wasn't just unacceptable, it was unforgivable. But the harshness of Diaz's words created shockwaves. Even those who agreed Raja deserved punishment balked at the idea of a death sentence. It was one thing to demand prison, another to call for execution. Critics argued that Diaz's comments were reckless, potentially dangerous, and only fueled the cycle of violence. Still, others insisted that his bluntness cut to the heart of the matter. Was Raja's attack really that different from attempted murder? And if so, why shouldn't Diaz call it what it was? With one comment, Nate Diaz had shifted the entire narrative. Raja's violence was still at the center of the storm, but now the world was also debating Diaz himself. And as the backlash grew, the question wasn't just what happens to Raja. It was, did Nate Diaz just go too far?